They say we're loud, opinionated, afraid, telling us to hush, dim our historical light. But darlings, we're the heartbeat, sharp and keen, unveiling the truth behind the silver screen.
History harpies hear us roar. Through the ages we explore.
Hi, and welcome to History Harpies. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Christine.
And we are here today to do Hometown Episode 1.
Hometown.
This will be an episode that deals with one of our hometowns. We're going to do 2 of them, inspired by The Bachelor, where people go to the hometowns and visit and meet each other's families and eat each other's favorite foods and wine and things like that. My hometown is the great city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, and we are also broadening it a bit to think about tri-state area culture in general. But today we will be talking about all things Philly and a little bit of New York.
And a little bit of New York. And we will not be putting any mayo on cheesesteaks.
Oh my gosh.
We will absolutely not be doing. I mean, I'm a vegetarian anyway. So
right, and I thought of that, but then I thought, oh, maybe there's some tofu cheesesteak that you eat and that you would put mayo on it.
That is so disgusting. And mayo is vomitous.
I would just find that so appalling, and I cannot be friends with anyone who puts mayo on a cheesesteak.
Vile.
So,
utterly vile.
I mean, and it's a complete blasphemy to the art of the cheesesteak. Now, some of you might think, well, as a person from Philly, what do you like on your cheesesteak? Or when we say cheesesteak, what do we mean? And I can answer this question really, really precisely. A real, authentic Philly cheesesteak is that cheese and steak. Okay. Not
hence
cheese,
the name.
Not Cheese Whiz, even though some of the famous places put Cheese Whiz on their cheesesteaks. But it is cheese, usually some sorts of mozzarella cheese and steak. Now, the invention of the pizza steak, which I always thought was a cheesesteak, is a cheesesteak with sauce.
I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. A pizza steak.
And that is what I get. So when I order a cheesesteak, okay, I say I want a pizza steak, which is cheese, meat, and sauce. And then you can get fried onions, sweet peppers, mushrooms, other stuff too.
But what kind of sauce?
Oh, marinara.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I was growing up and we always just said, oh, we're ordering pizza steaks, I thought those were cheesesteaks. But then in reality, I did a little bit of research and realized that my family was actually not eating the authentic cheesesteak, which does not have sauce. My husband doesn't eat it with sauce, but my kids do. So I'm actually an invert, okay, in this way, because my cheesesteaks have to have sauce.
I had no idea. I mean, I had no idea that there was such a thing as a pizza steak.
Yeah, pizza steak.
And I didn't actually realize that there's no sauce in a cheesesteak.
You can also say a cheesesteak with sauce. Either one. Either one's going to work. It's not going to work here. Okay, they're not going to know what you're talking about. But it will work anywhere in the tri-state area. Jersey, Philly, New York. They know what you mean when you say pizza steak or cheesesteak with sauce.
That is good to know. I have already, Lauren, learned something about Philadelphia.
And we can get it. The other thing is, okay, people from Philly do not put mustard on their soft pretzels.
Okay.
That's another thing. I mean, you can, but that's not keeping it old school.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Again, I'm learning so much.
Or melted cheese, for that matter. I mean, you don't put other things on a pretzel. You just eat it.
Okay. Wait. But I do have to go back to cheese for a second with the cheesesteak. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You said cheesesteak cheese is mozzarella?
Well, it could be mozzarella, it could be provolone. I mean, there's lots of different kinds of cheese that go on cheesesteaks.
Interesting.
Okay?
Again.
But we also get into the whole realm of hoagies, tuna, Italian, what's on them. The bread is huge. So you have Atlantic City rolls, which make for a really authentic hoagie. Okay, not a sub, a hoagie. Okay,
I don't know the difference.
Right, no. Subs are what people say here when they have just like a roll that, is a long roll that you like put meat in. People call that a sub. Or like a meatball sub.
Yes.
But
which I do know of.
okay, but a hoagie is a hoagie. A hoagie is a sandwich with cold cuts. A hoagie has tuna in it. That's a hoagie.
Okay, we will, when we talk about my hometown,
Right.
more broadly, like the state of Maine.
Sure.
We will be talking about sandwiches again. And so
Right.
I'm going to hold off on making
Yeah,
my sandwich
no,
contribution
that's
right
okay.
now.
I mean-
but this is, again, the difference between a sub and a hoagie remains a
And I always go, even here, like, Publix makes a good hoagie. To me, they make the best version of a hoagie. And of course I have to say sub because I have no idea what I'm talking about when I say hoagie. But if I were to go home and say, there's a place, Lee's Hoagies, that's where everyone gets their hoagies, right? Never call Lee subs. It's ridiculous. I had never, until I moved out of Philly, I had never heard of the word sub being used to refer to a sandwich.
Oh.
No.
Interesting. I mean, even I had, and one does not use sub and hoagie in the state of Maine, I think, at all. Actually,
Never
well,
heard
as
of
we
it.
will talk about next time.
Never heard of it.
As we will talk
so
about
how
next
has
time.
your week been going?
Oh my gosh. Well, I do want to. The first thing I want to say is that I am strangely excited that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are now engaged.
Really?
Although I think the ring is hideous.
The ring is hideous.
Ugly.
The ring is
ugly. Ugly.
Awful.
Ugly.
Awful.
It is like Carrie Bradshaw's first engagement ring from
no, the gold band with that pear-shaped diamond.
That is the first thing I thought of. So, not a fan of the ring.
No.
I hate to say it, but it's
No.
true. She needs to trade that one in for a much, much better one.
She needs Charlotte's Elizabeth Taylor,
Yes,
Harry
absolutely.
Winston ring.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I did want to say that. I did also want to point out that perhaps the most frustrating thing that has happened to me this week is, as some of you may know, I am a single parent, and one of my sons the other day, sitting down to a homemade, nutritious, hot meal that I had made for him and his brother, kind of looked at it and said, "Why do we always eat the same things? I want you to switch it up." At which point I said, trying not to throw a plate across the room,
Right.
I said, "Well, honey, you can always look in one of our 7,000 cookbooks. You can pick out something. You can say, can we please have X next week? Again, you can look and see something that you want me to cook."
Oh, I thought you were going to say he has to cook it.
No, I did say that too. I did say that too, because actually he's a very good cook. But I said, at the very least, tell me something that you want me to cook or something you'd like. And he said, "That's your job."
No, he didn't.
He did. He did.
That's your job.
Your job.
In what century? In what decade?
But I don't think, in fairness to my son,
okay.
I don't think he meant it in a gendered way.
meant it
although
in a-
that is possible.
he meant it in a mom way.
He meant it in a mom way. And I even said, and then I'm going to stop this rant.
That's okay.
I said, any day, any dinner, when you are not eating either cold cereal or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is a win for me. It's a victory.
Yep.
And that's the way everyone in the household needs to understand it.
Man.
No cereal, no jelly, you are doing awesome. So, so anyway.
They wouldn't like living here. That's all I have to say. It's every human for themselves. And now that there are fewer humans inhabiting this house, it is really every human for themselves. I mean, even Penny is kind of feeding herself. Yeah, I mean, she's looking around. It's rough.
Where the squirrels outside.
It's rough. So I have now 2 kids in college, settling in. Today is the first day of classes for one. Yesterday was the first classes for the other.
Awesome.
They are still there. I mean, one has been there for a while, but the one who just started, he's there. He says he's living his best life.
That is so fantastic.
I'm very happy for him, and I hope he went to all his classes today. He said he went to his classes yesterday, but I will tell you, again, we've talked about this before, and I'm also going to say I'm proud of myself because this is sort of the opposite of your dinner story. I did not use Life 360 to make sure that my 18-year-old went to his classes and then called him to verify.
I'm very
which
proud of
apparently is a thing.
I have heard that this is a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's a thing that should stop on the part of everybody who is doing it.
Everyone
You have
involved.
to say.
Everyone involved.
It's not helpful.
No.
Not helpful.
No.
So I am proud of you.
Yep.
I certainly would have been surprised if you had done something like that. But you know what? I'm going to do the most fantastic segue right now.
Okay.
It's because of your strong Philly girl,
Yep.
independent spirit,
Yep.
that you're not hounding your kids, which reminds me of the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about the city of Philadelphia and some of the stuff that we looked at for this week. Oh, and you know what? We have to point out that since it is our 10th episode, we are actually talking about music today. In addition to
we are talking about music and
switching it up.
And
we love music.
We not only music, but the Kennedy Center of it all, right? Bringing in the arts in a big way, okay? But yes, we are talking about music. We're going to start with the Billy Joel documentary, and So It Goes, which is 5 hours of Billy Joel, pain, depression, substance abuse, and
marriages, divorces, children.
All of it. And I have to say, and I think between the two of us, I am the bigger Billy Joel
fan. That is 100% true.
Okay. I love Billy Joel. I love everything about Billy Joel's music. I have been listening to it since it first came out, and own all the albums, and seen concerts, and saw the Elton John Billy Joel dual concert, and just loved. I don't love all the songs, but I love Billy Joel. Okay, there's just a big exclamation point at the end of that. So going in, I was sort of thinking, well, okay, like, what am I going to learn? I know about this guy, and whoa, I don't know this guy at all. It was so interesting, depressing, but also just so enlightening into his musical process, but also his pain, but also his family history, and so many elements of Billy Joel that I knew nothing about. And the interesting thing about this documentary, and I've talked to a lot of other sort of fellow Gen X friends who live and die by Billy Joel, is like, they didn't know any of this either. Like, this isn't lore, right? This is sort of like stuff coming out of nowhere. And I was just really blown away by the talent in his family, the story about his father who abandoned the family, and then his quest to find his father, but also his real difficulty in expressing himself, and his difficulty in these relationships, and the way that music was this incredibly important outlet for him to say all the things, both in the kind of granular level, but also in the kind of macro level, meaning of life level. There's so much to it.
Well, and this was one of the, to me, things that is so sad, really profoundly sad about that documentary is, and of course I completely agree with you, that this is one of the most important components of the documentary, that this is someone who has only ever been able to express himself through music, as you say, on the granular level, as well as sort of a meta level. But then we have that moment where later in his life, he loses the ability to write songs.
Right.
And one of the things that I kept thinking of with that, and the whole thing is a tragedy, right? I mean, amid like the hit singles and the sellout concerts, it is a tragic, tragic story from start to finish.
It is.
There's no redemption. There's no sense of like, oh my God, he got over the hump. You know, he went to Betty Ford. It was all great after that.
No.
There's nothing. It ends on a really sad, tragic note. But what I thought was really painful was exactly that. Okay, this person who has only been able to express his emotions through song, but then he can't write songs anymore, right? And how awful is that? That the one emotional outlet that he has is gone. And I think one of the saddest things, although it's from an earlier part of his life, is that he has had a stepson in the 1970s. Absolutely. And when Billy Joel and his first wife, Elizabeth Weber, break up, the stepson says in the documentary, there was no closure. Billy, in effect, is just gone. And this man that he had lived with as a stepfather for years. And that, in effect, Billy Joel ends up doing to this child the same thing that his father had done to him. Because there's no sense, right, later in the documentary that they have any contact, even though the stepson is a talking head in the documentary.
Yeah, and I think the documentary also, even with Alexa, that he has contact with Alexa, but it's not clear how present he was in her life.
Yes,
and that he, of course, wrote songs about her.
Mm-hmm.
She's also in the documentary. She's talking about his influence on her
Mm-hmm.
and also her different perspectives on the struggles that he's gone through.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get this sense of present parenting.
I agree.
In the way that he talks about his
Current
children,
batch.
his current batch.
Yes.
Okay.
Very young children.
Correct. And he's like, now I'm ready to be a dad.
Even though he's what, 75 or
Right. Now I'm like,
Okay.
Now I'm in it. Now I'm in
Okay.
it. And you do, at least, again, from the footage, from seeing them at all the concerts, from them in the Billy Joel t-shirts, and they're young, right?
yes.
And Alexa is probably in her, in her 30s by now. If maybe she's older.
Yeah, late. I mean, what? Born
but
85, 84?
But you do not get the sense, as much as he cared about her, loved her, he wrote that classical piece about separation from
Yes.
her. So it seemed, at least in the documentary, that his relationship with her is one of kind of coming and going rather than one of him really trying to be there for her even after he and Christy Brinkley divorced.
Yes, and I agree with you. There is not a sense of presence. There is a sense that he is constantly touring, right? In part because this is how he responds to his own emotional inability, that constantly being on the road and having this kind of camaraderie, right, with his guy friends that we see. I agree. And so I do think one of the questions then of the documentary, because it does end in such a sad note, that, well, what is his parenting going to look like with these two younger kids? Because he is what? 75,
Yeah.
right? And God
Yeah.
willing, he'll live for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's still not convincing.
Right.
Even though the documentary, he himself is saying, I'm great, I'm a present father now, this is so fantastic.
I'm trying to learn from
my mistakes,
Right.
and my own father after he passed away, and I've been able to sort of process some of this stuff. It's not convincing at all to me. And I think it's one of the many things, and we talked about this the other day outside of the pod, it's one of the many reasons why at the end of the documentary, you just want to cry.
Yes, and even the relationship with his half-brother, where you see, again, he's this incredible composer. They have, obviously, this very, very powerful family DNA.
Yes, absolutely.
For music, for musical genius. And you see pictures of him with his half-brother, and again, there's a relationship, but it doesn't seem like one that has been so formative and lasting that it has shaped his outlook or shaped his ability to make connections with family. The one person that it really seems like he had a strong connection with was his mother. And again, he does talk about when his mother died, and he does talk about the early influences of his mother and thinking about her and how she raised him, and his sister who appears in the documentary. But it's somebody who is both completely alone in the world and at times, or many times, doesn't want to be Billy Joel, but then has to be Billy Joel because he doesn't know how to live outside that persona, or he's very, very lonely, or he turns to alcohol when he's not in the Billy Joel persona, as much as he might detest that persona.
Yes, and he returns to it, but then we also have his mother herself as an alcoholic.
Right.
The incredibly troubled childhood that he has, that he and his sister, they never know what she's going to be like, if she's going to be drunk or sober. And obviously, one of the things that it seems didn't happen in that documentary is this sense of really clearly expressing that he has returned to both models of his parents. Right. The absent father and the alcoholic mother.
Right.
And of course, it's screamingly clear in the documentary. And one of the things that I feel like I missed is that sense of an adult relationship that he had with her. There's so much focus on the father, right? Tracking him down, going to Vienna, meeting the half-brother, the whole second family, and all of these very tragic pictures of him with his father, where there's no really any kind of physical closeness. But I really wanted to hear more about the mother, right? We see one image of her, sort of dancing when Billy Joel's an adult together, and she was live for the party. But I was curious about that, and I really wanted to hear more. He's just such a damaged person.
He is. Well, but he does talk about the passion that both his parents had for music, and that his mother made sure that he had these music lessons, and that the
piano was always
there, and that he did practice, and that he was really schooled in classical music, and that his parents really instilled that in him. And so it then, what's interesting to me is that it goes from this child who is again, schooled in classical music, in Tin Pan Alley, and Broadway, and a lot of the things that his parents loved, came then to become part of this metal band for a while. But
that was
he
fascinating.
never, as much as he saw himself as sort of this outsider, once his father left, they were really poor. He's from this Hicksville, Long Island town, right? He sees himself as an outsider, but he never embraces punk. He never embraces any kind of these like super rebellious genres. He, again, is unsettled in his musical identity until he moves into this kind of balladeer personality or balladeer genre.
Okay, it's really interesting that you say that because I am not a Billy Joel fan.
Right.
And I mean, like anyone else, I can sing every word to Piano Man.
Sure.
Right? Who can't? Who can't?
Sure.
But, and there are, I would say, a couple of individual songs where I was like, oh, I like that. But what has always sort of driven me crazy about him is precisely that it is so clear that he's coming from that Tin Pan Alley background, right? That classic songwriter mode, the classical piano training. But then I always felt, but wait a minute, then he's kind of receding into this persona of 1950s greaser, right? Rock and roll rebel, juvenile delinquent, which is obviously something that he expresses very clearly in a lot of songs and a lot of videos, right? This is fundamentally what Uptown Girl is about,
that whole album is the doo-wop album is about that.
But I would even say also, I think of something like You May Be Right, from What Glass Houses, much earlier, and that's still the persona. Right, of again the dangerous guy. And I think what was so kind of interesting to me from the documentary is to in effect kind of give him a little bit of that street cred. Well, I was like, oh, wait a minute. So he did have again this very difficult,
absolutely.
But even if I can concede that, right, I agree precisely with what you're saying in terms of not embracing rebellious musical genres.
Right.
And so that to me is this huge discordance in his career. Right, that I can never make. Even something like, again, You May Be Right, that is intending to be a rock and roll song. Right, not even thinking about the later doo-wop stuff that he doesn't.
No, but like The Entertainer, which is probably one of his most rebellious songs, right? Where it's just like, fuck you, industry.
But musically, it doesn't sound it.
It doesn't sound
it. Doesn't sound it.
But I think that's what makes it subversive, is that it's wrapped in this neat Frank Sinatra package that he's very intentionally trying to say, this is me, this is Billy Joel. And of course, this is why people didn't take him seriously as a real, quote, rock artist, because his music doesn't sound rock and rolly, folky, all of that. It's not part of the rockist canon, but it is part of the rock ethos. And he would say it is. And I believe it is too, because of the rebellious impulses. I mean, again, you think of songs like Angry Young Man, and you think of, again, You May Be Right, all kinds of songs we can get into, Captain Jack, right? These are all about these people he went to high school with, or lonely people, or outsiders, and that sort of thing. And that's Summer Highland Falls. All of those songs are about, again, a lot of the same people that Springsteen captures in a lot of his albums.
But I guess I have difficulty making that direct connection between either lyrical subjects, appealing back to that particular past, appealing to the working class, appealing to hardship, and again, how that translates into the music itself, right? Because of course you can say every single Frank Sinatra song, right? Any kind of like, it's 3 a.m. and I'm drunk, I'm the last guy in the bar, right? Those aren't rebellious songs, right? They're not rock songs. And I think even Billy Joel is so self-conscious about it. And that has always really gotten it for me. If you are going to be, say, a punk, if you are going to be, again, a quote-unquote real, I'm doing my little air quotes
Keeping
here,
it real.
rocker, then you aren't self-conscious about it. And of course, the whole point of It's Still Rock and Roll to Me is to criticize, right, punk and other sort of fashion movements, right?
That's right.
And so to me, he that very sense of resistance, that very sense of, again, I'm not part of the crowd. And it's easy to understand, having watched the documentary, why he didn't feel like he was part of the crowd.
Correct.
But the fact that he so clearly cares about it.
He does care about it.
That's why you are not, in fact, a rock artist.
Okay.
That would be my view.
But he does care about it, and it's still rock and roll to me is a response to critics, right?
Yes.
And the Rolling Stone guys or whoever,
and
right?
that obviously pisses him off.
Which pisses him off.
Yes.
And the documentary even says he can't stop reading. He can't stop reading these articles that are
Over and over
saying
again.
that he's saccharine or that he's just a total mid. Okay.
Very good.
Right? But in fact, he cannot say, fuck you, I don't really care, and I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm an artist, and, artists create art. He never says that. Yeah. And he fights with it, and he wrestles with it, but in the end, he continues to write these songs that are cut from the same cloth. And some of them more so than others. And again, when he talks about Just the Way You Are, right? Which is so funny because, of course, that's the song that most people know. They dance to at their weddings. He says he hated it, and he says he didn't want it to come out as a single, but it was Elizabeth Weber's idea, and of course, it became this huge hit. And it sounds again like elevator music.
It absolutely does.
And nonetheless, again, it's the song. Paul McCartney said, I wish I had written that song.
And of course, that is a strike against it, right? Because you do have Just the Way You Are. I utterly loathe that song, right? The whole 1970s kind of saxophone solo thing going on, right? It's so treacly. And so when in the documentary, Paul McCartney shows up and says, this is the song that I wish I had written, that makes perfect sense to me. Of course, Paul McCartney, someone so addicted, right, to the treacly, over-the-top, sort of smushy love song. And I was like, Billy Joel, someone just should have exited, that part out. But that's what I think is so great about the documentary. Yeah. Because I feel like at one and the same time, it certainly made me sympathize with him more.
Sure.
And the last thing maybe we should talk about the documentary before we talk about our other things is, again, this issue of class and how it shows up in his music, in the documentary. Again, obviously, we've already mentioned Uptown Girl, which is completely in terms of the video, right, in terms of the lyrics.
Right. Guys in the gas station.
Guys in the gas station, working class, simple guys. But of course, we also have that, as we hear about in the documentary, in something like Piano Man.
Sure.
Which is about working people and
him having this gig, and he had to perform under a different name because he had these copyright issues, and there's a legal battle going on, and so he's working, and Elizabeth is working in the same restaurant. She's a waitress, and yes, and a lot of these songs, and then we have Allentown, and then we have Goodnight Saigon, and we have all of these songs that are supposed to appeal to working class sympathies and to reflect Billy Joel's own working class identity. Kind of guy from the wrong side of the tracks, guy who really never fit in, guy who hangs around with a bunch of, his bandmates. And again, in the very beginning, before he starts to date Elizabeth Weber, when he was just like hanging out with them as a couple, right? And they're living together, and they're just they're not really a throuple, but they're
whatever they
are, but he's
just having an affair with his best friend's wife.
He's on the outs. Yeah. But throughout the whole documentary, he seems to be on the outs. Yeah, and he can come in at times, right? There are moments when he's being celebrated and when there are crowds and when there are people who love him and also people trying to help him, but he's constantly pushing them away. Whether it's Brinkley, whether it's the wife, Katie Lee, whether it's, and again, he was angry at her for sending him to the Betty Ford clinic, and he cannot embrace love, he cannot embrace, he can embrace stadium fans.
Yes.
And that's clear.
Because they're distant. And I think that what is also so interesting about him in terms of class is that he's obviously exceptionally good at masking. Right. He's also, and I never would have thought of this before the documentary, he's exceptionally good at code switching.
Yes.
Right. And so, because what I want to say is that when he's doing his little working class persona, and then you watch the documentary, it's like, wait a minute. And I was like, I was right all the time. He's actually a poser because no real working class person is going to have a father who moves to fucking Vienna and whose half brother is an orchestra conductor, right? Don't give me that shit. right? You're not a real working class person, but of course.
But he is.
And that's what's so fascinating. And
his
that's why,
life was that.
Yeah, his life was that.
And
but that's why I do think he's this genius in some ways, code switcher,
yes.
right? And then but at the same time, you can see that it also kind of drives him crazy and has led to a lot of criticism of his music by me, including by me, in the sense of saying, okay, now I'm doing the piano pieces, now I'm doing the rock thing, and I think it's much nicer to say, oh, no, wait a minute. He's so fragmented in terms of where he understands himself in the world. Again, particularly in terms of social class code switching, that this is kind of what we end up with. And I thought that was, again, such a rich, for someone who is not a fan, I thought that was a really rich thing to think about.
It is. It's also that the documentary ends with this thing, well, we can take Billy Joel seriously now in the last 10 years when he had his Madison Square Garden residency because the songs have lasted so long, and in fact they sound better when played by an older man than by a younger man, which is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, seeing him playing New York State of Mind as an older man, and again, you think about the Ray Charles influences in there. You think about again older crooners singing a sort of Bing Crosby, right? New York State of Mind
at a club in 1945,
right? Thinking about, harkening back to those, a Renaissance man, this all comes out in an older Billy Joel. And it's sort of like thinking about, again, an old soul and Billy Joel being somebody who really did cherish a lot of older genres, but just didn't really own up to them and said, well, I'm going to do rock and roll, but actually, I really am more Frank Sinatra, or I really am more of a blues man like Ray Charles, or I really am a balladeer like Tony Bennett, or somebody like that. And what's so interesting, again, to me about a lot of the famous talking heads is they're all really jealous of his melodies, right? They're all like, he has the best melodies, he has this incredible ability to storyteller, and mine aren't as good as his. And again, I mean, it's interesting to see these different figures really talking about his melodic abilities, which I think most people, and it's probably a lot of people who know one Billy Joel song, probably know all of the words, even if it's just Piano Man, right? Because these melodies are so powerful. And sometimes they're annoyingly powerful and you can't get them out of your head. But we all know a Billy Joel song.
Yes.
I think.
I think so too. And I will say, and this is the last thing I will say about Billy Joel, is that I have had the wonderful experience, and perhaps you have too, of being in a karaoke bar where someone chose Piano Man. And of course, every single person in the bar, right, including me, sang along every single word.
Now,
and it was a great experience.
Some people might wonder why in a Philly hometown episode we are talking about Billy Joel. I will just say, and I will say this, okay? Billy Joel is tri-state area, okay? Billy Joel is meaningful, I would argue, in the same way people in Philly, people from Jersey. Again, it's not Bruce. Bruce is definitively New Jersey. But Billy Joel has a special place to Philadelphians, as much as he does to people in New York and Long Island, where he came from, and all of that. But Philly people love Billy Joel. And because, again, of many of the themes that we're going to talk about in Rocky, and also in Trading Places, there is that up-and-coming grit, fighting for it.
Everything's against
trying
you.
Not to be a bum. That's Billy Joel, and that's Philly. And so Billy Joel is definitely part of the brotherly love. And again, you would never be able to get a ticket last minute to a Billy Joel concert in Philadelphia anywhere. Now than ever.
This is really the last thing I'm going to say about Billy Joel before we move on. One of the things that I thought really does sum up what you just said is that when we see him, right, on his boat, Alexa, obviously named after his daughter, that it's just this, like, crappy little trawler, right? Like, this is a man who can have the most fantastic Jeff Bezos style yacht,
Succession,
the whole thing,
the whole thing. Logan Roy, right?
He's on this piece of crap little trawler, right, out there driving it himself, and I was like, this is it, right? This
Right.
is your sort of like dream
Right.
boat.
Right.
And I was like, you can just see, this is exactly the way that he would be if he had never become a musician.
But
This guy.
one would argue that, again, that house he's in that's under construction.
Yeah.
Again, I've talked to people who have been at Sag Harbor more recently, and we are not seeing an accurate representation of where Billy Joel, of the, I'm sure many homes that Billy Joel owns, and what his life looks like.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, because he is a code switcher, and he is like occupying all of these
He's
class
not gonna
statuses
show
at the
us all
same
the
time.
stuff. He's not going to show us all the stuff.
Oh wait, maybe because we just mentioned code switching. Is it time to talk then about trading places and sort of people occupying different social class statuses?
I think that is a great segue. And what did you think of Trading Places?
So as I told you, I was under the impression that I hadn't seen it before. I didn't have a strong memory of having watched it. And then when I started watching it, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. And what I think, the first thing I want to say about Trading Places is it is so clearly to me a sequel to Animal House. And I know that sounds strange.
No.
I know that sounds weird.
Okay.
But I think, obviously Trading Places is made during the generational run, as my son would say, of John Landis as a director, when he is simply knocking out all of these incredibly memorable films. And obviously Animal House has sort of cast a really unpleasant eye on the sort of super waspy frat guys, right? The rich guys who are at the college. And I was like, oh yes. And this, of course, is also the social class that we're seeing in Trading Places at the Duke's financial institution, whatever they do at Duke and Duke. And so
Commodities brokers.
Come on, whatever, pig bellies or whatever it is. Oh, frozen orange juice, right? And so that was interesting to think about, sort of this continuation of that discussion of class, although with less beer, of course, than in Animal House.
Okay.
So that was my first hot take on Trading Places.
That is an interesting take on Trading Places. So Trading Places, starring the fabulous Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, I would say at the pinnacle of their funniness, their greatness. Both of them with careers that are beginning and their stints on SNL and then many films to come. But this is those two actors at their greatest.
Yes,
to
and
me,
having great chemistry.
Great chemistry, and the supporting cast with Jamie Lee Curtis and Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici, and again all the other even smaller roles that are in the film. Everyone is on point, and again, it's a lot of people ask me, especially my students, because I'd say tell them please watch Trading Places because it is so funny. And they say, well, that's an old movie. And, again, the premise of our podcast,
why we're here.
right? The premise of our podcast. I was like, in 2025, Trading Places holds up.
It does.
As I would put it against any of what someone would think to be the funniest things that exist right now, because it is just so spot on. The camera work is spot on. The acting is spot on. And in maybe less than 2 hours, but 2 hours, no more than 2 hours. It tells a story and it shows us who these characters are, and it also has this comedic timing to it that is so brilliant that allows you to both have a lot of empathy for these people, but also both to laugh at them and to laugh with them.
And of course, the plot means that both of our characters need to do the opposite.
Right.
So in case anyone has not seen Trading Places, these two older men who are very waspy older men who are running this financial institution, Duke and Duke, they make a pretty terrible bet that is all about nature and nurture, environment, and basically what someone is made of. And so we have Billy Ray Valentine, who is a con artist, Capricorn, played by Eddie Murphy, who is begging for money out in a park. We have, on the other hand, Dan Aykroyd's character, Lewis, Winthorpe, who is this, again, sort of very waspy, sort of young employee of this firm,
Harvard
the manager of the firm. The whole thing belongs to the club.
Surrounded by all the finals clubs. And
his fiancée is this super kind of wasp princess. And in effect, the Duke brothers bet that they can turn each of those into the other person. That Billy Ray can become the superstar financier who's belonging to the private club, and that Dan Aykroyd will turn to a life of crime if he is deprived of all of his benefits.
Right.
And so we do have, again, both characters, as I said a second ago, have to in effect play the opposite kind of person. Dan Aykroyd is both very waspy and rich at the beginning, and then we have to see him at points of degradation, and the opposite happens with Eddie Murphy.
Yes. And so what's so great about it is both seeing these different characters in their unnatural habitats, right? Or evolving to be the people that they are, right? But also a lot of, especially on the Eddie Murphy side, the way that he is treated by the Dukes, who are racist,
super racist,
who are
openly racist,
and who, I mean, their understandings of anything beyond their own world is just so flagrantly repellent, right?
Yes.
And but he is so funny in absorbing this world and in also proving them wrong, and but also in the way that he communicates with people, and again, the way that he sort of never loses the essence of Eddie Murphy, right? He doesn't become a different person because he is living in this, fancy house
with
and
a
butler
Yeah.
and all of that. And at the same time, Dan Aykroyd, watching him living with Jamie Lee Curtis with the black eye. And again, my favorite scene of all of Trading Places is when Dan Aykroyd dresses up as Santa Claus and puts the salmon in his beard and then eats it on the bus.
Gross.
It is the grossest thing.
But the beard is filthy.
But it is so funny, and whoever would have thought of that, right? This drunk old Santa laying there and eating salmon out of your fake beard is the
so gross.
Funniest thing. So in the end, Billy Ray Valentine and Louis Winthorpe realize that this is a bet, and they come together and they find a way to triumph over the Dukes.
And so, they not only then impoverish the Dukes, but what is also really interesting, of course, they end up in the same place socially.
Yes.
Right? But then also in terms of kind of, I don't know, how do I want to describe it? Dan Aykroyd obviously ends up with the hooker with the heart of gold, right? Jamie Lee Curtis's character.
We have
a range of
sex workers in all
everything.
Of our
we cannot
podcasts.
get away. Trading Places was chosen because it was a Philly film.
It was!
Not because it was a sex worker film.
No.
Hollywood just loves its sex workers. So again, but she's clearly not a sex worker anymore at the end of the movie because she's left.
And her vote is way nicer than Billy Joel's.
It is way nicer than Billy Joel's. But we're also told explicitly that she is only a temporary sex worker, that she's saving her money so she can go and do something else. And then we have this random girlfriend of Billy Ray that we've never even seen before. We never see her again.
And also, Coleman has a girlfriend. The butler.
A much younger girlfriend. And so I do love that they do end up kind of in the same place socially. Not only because they have money now, both of them, but because Dan Aykroyd is kind of like chilled out a little bit, right? Billy Ray is no longer a con man, right? He's wearing his nice little sweater at the end on the beach. And so
looking good, Billy Ray. Feeling good, Louis.
I have to say, one thing that I really am kind of sad about younger generations, Lauren, and where I think that our Generation X was so lucky to be able to watch a young Eddie Murphy while it was even when he was on SNL, while it was happening. And I don't think it is so hard to express, right, how you were seeing a star. Right? So brilliant. Right? And to think about it now, right? What, he was like 20, 21 when he's on SNL. Yeah. So brilliant, so charismatic, so amazing. Right. And so I think that Trading Places...
And the stand-up, I mean, that everyone saw Raw, right? Yes. That everybody was watching these HBO stand-up shows and just all of it, right? And everything he did was funny.
Everything. I saw him on that tour, by the way. The Rock that became Raw.
Oh, wow.
In Portland, Maine, of all places.
Oh my gosh!
I saw
there's a segue between these.
There's a segue.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And one thing, so just to talk about the Philly of it, is that the thing about Trading Places, which I love, is that it makes such fantastic use of the Philly landscape. There, you see Independence Hall, You see all these different parts of Philadelphia, right? A lot of North Broad Street. You see the Union Club, where Duke and Duke, right near City Hall. You see a lot of the Philly landscape, and then of course where Jamie Lee Curtis is living. You see those parts of it, but there's very much a Philly vibe. You see the different shots of the art museum and the Schuylkill, and you definitely know you're there. And what's interesting in terms of class, of course, is that Philadelphia is a very complicated city, and of course you do have the Dan Aykroyds of the world and the Todds and the barbershop quartet. At places like the Philadelphia Racquet Club, right? I mean, those places exist. And then of course the inequality and the folks like the Eddie Murphy in the very beginning, and it does a really good job of showing a lot of different sides of Philadelphia, while also, I think, not succumbing to cliche because of the vehicle of the plot, right?
So, do you think that the movie would be the same kind of thing or be as effective if it weren't a Philadelphia film?
No. I think it has to be a Philly movie. In part because not just of where it takes place, but there's the trip to DC, there's the trip to the stock exchange. I think if it took place in New York, it wouldn't have the same vibe.
I agree.
And I also think that the Eddie Murphy character and the trajectory of what he's doing, and it's a Philly vibe. Right, I'm fighting for it, and I'm hustling for it, and he's still a hustler by the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's very much this sense that they are part of the city, and the Dukes. The other thing is that the Duke house in the suburbs, and I believe it's somewhere in Ardmore where that house is filmed. There's very much this sense of suburb, city, and then again taking the train to very close other cities, whether it's DC for Beaks and that shenanigans, or again to the stock exchange at the very end. Because the other thing that makes it important is that if the Dukes were located in New York, where the stock exchange is, that would be a different story than if they were located in Philadelphia, where commodities exchange is certainly part of the DNA of Philly, but it's not the same as New York. And I think it's important that it's there.
Well, and you do have this really fantastic moment when Billy Ray and Lewis go to New York.
Yes.
That Billy Ray, very sadly for us, looks up at the World Trade Center.
Right.
And of course, I hate and love seeing the World Trade Center. Right, in our sort of pre-2001 media. But Billy Ray himself, he clearly has not been, to New York before, at least this part of New York. He hasn't been to downtown. And so the sense of he's sort of looking up of like, oh, this really is this kind of center of the financial world. And so the sense of how far he has gone, not in some sort of like, I don't know.
Right.
What am I, not in some sort of like, I don't know, what am I thinking of? Like rags to riches way.
No.
Like I am making things happen.
Well, also, there's a difference between what he was doing with the Dukes and, in the very beginning when they explain, we have oranges, we have pork bellies, like you'd find any bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes. Then he goes from that scale to then, oh my gosh, this is traded on the biggest floor in the world at the stock exchange, and now I'm like the big show.
Yes, and the two of them are going to manipulate that.
Yes,
right. That they are going to sort of bend it to their will.
So I would make that argument that the plot of the film it lends itself to a city other than New York, and that Philadelphia also, because of the combination of the grit, the history, and then the different shots of different statues and different great white men. That's all meant to position the Dan Aykroyd character, but also the narrative of sort of, again, rags to riches, growth, independence. I mean, all of these themes are kind of, if you really want to read into it, I think they're all there. And it shows how both of these men become both independent of the Dukes, right? But also of their former selves in
Well,
different ways.
And it is also interesting that Dan Aykroyd himself, right? So we might look at him as being just a junior version of the Dukes, but of course he is just as much a pawn.
Right.
And of course one of the very funny moments, but also sad in some ways, is that when he learns that his entire life has been destroyed for $1, that this is the amount of the bet that the brothers have made, and that this is how cavalier they are with other people's lives, this sort of very ingrained, sort of old money, waspy kind of cluster, that they are willing to just destroy people's lives.
Now, I do
for
have
$1.
I do have one question. And
Yes.
it might be a hole in the film, but I've been thinking about it.
Yes.
So, but I want to know what you think.
Okay.
So when Coleman first pretends like he does not know
Yes.
who Dan Aykroyd is, because of course the Dukes are
Yes.
paying him, why does Coleman then allow Dan Aykroyd to come back? Why doesn't he follow the same logic that he is still paying? He's still being paid to pretend that the Billy Ray Valentine character, is on top. They have not agreed to switch them back yet. Why does he let him back?
So my understanding of that was that for whatever reason, he has been himself softened by his encounters and time spent with Billy Ray.
Okay.
That Billy Ray is this tool for humanizing
Okay.
people. Right. And one might, I suppose, complain about that in terms of the movie. Right.
Right.
That he almost is getting into, I don't want to say sort of like, quote unquote,
Magical.
Negro
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
But the idea, that particular trope. And he's not that, right? But I think we are supposed to think that the longer that the time has gone on, he has spent more time with Billy Ray, that Billy Ray himself, he knows that Billy Ray is an object of the bet as well.
True.
Presumably he knows that Billy Ray is also going to be thrown in the trash can.
Right.
That it's not that this is changing Billy Ray's life forever. And he's aware of that, and so he feels guilty then about both of them.
But we also know in the beginning that Coleman feels unappreciated. He's making the crepes, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
they're
And he
just
has to
sitting
throw them in the
there,
trash
just throws them in
can.
the trash, and nobody ever says thank you.
Yeah.
And he has to, he's humiliated in a lot of ways, right? And then, of course, Billy Ray says thank you, and Billy Ray says, why don't you have some of this yourself, or have a drink yourself, or ask him how he is, pay some attention to him.
Yes.
And so, there's that softening effect, but also a sense of appreciation and gratitude, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that he is able to relate, again, in terms of class. Right. In terms of class.
Right.
So, and again, thinking about hard Scrabble people, thinking about class, thinking about being, again, going the distance. Oh my good, the things I do, Lauren.
Girl.
For you and for this podcast.
Girl, I
for the
gotta
10
tell you,
people listening to
our
us.
friendship is on thin ice.
sweet
with
Lord.
I told one of my
Sweet
students
Lord.
that you didn't like it, and they said, "What is up with her?" and I said, I don't know. I said, I think she was tired, or I don't know what the issue was, but when I heard that Christine did not like Rocky, which, again, I would not repeat that to anyone you know from Philadelphia. I don't know
Did you tell Jim that I didn't like Rocky?
I don't think we've had a chance to have
Please
that
don't tell him.
discussion.
Please don't tell him.
It would be like saying you liked and just like that. Okay? That's where that goes, right?
Okay, in my defense.
And again, you like whatever you like, and that's what makes this more interesting and fine.
Okay, in case it isn't clear, I absolutely thought that Rocky, sucked.
No!
Here's why. Okay, and I think you can tell that Sylvester Stallone wrote it in 3 days. I think you... Okay, here's the thing. I think probably if I had seen it years ago, if I had seen it when I was younger, if I had seen it before 10 sequels or whatever the number currently is, if I had seen it before I had any exposure to Stallone as a cultural
whatever.
thing,
Right. Rambo Stallone.
and
And
the whole thing.
I don't think about any of that with him.
And see, and that's the thing is, I for whatever reason, I'll always remember an interview that he gave with Movie Line. Remember Movie Line? Great magazine.
Okay.
Years ago. A million years ago. And he was just so clearly the most arrogant, sexist kind of a-hole. And again, and at that point
This isn't like the Planet Hollywood era.
it was in the Planet Hollywood era.
This is not a defense of Stallone. This is a defense of
aware.
Rocky.
I am aware.
Okay.
But all I'm saying is that instead of of being in 1976, right? Not that I would have seen it in 1976, but instead of seeing it as something fresh, new,
Yes.
right? Again, having any kind of Philly-related
all of that.
sensibilities about it, I was like, I cannot stand this movie. It is so fucking boring. I don't care. I want to see. I want to see him get the crap beat out of him. I'm kidding about that part. That's not true.
No.
But it absolutely was, and I think we talked about this last time in the pod. One of these, again, 70s movies, right? And many of them are wonderful and fantastic, and I love them. But where it really is this kind of slice of life,
Yes.
right? However much that we are supposed to have this path, right?
Sure.
Moving to that fight at the end.
Oh, but I do think
I was
there
like,
is
I don't
a
want to
path.
see him walk down
I
the street
do-
again.
Oh,
I don't
love
want to
it.
see
I
him.
love it.
I don't want to
I
see
love
it. There's the whole scene of where Polly simply is taking the trash can from the front of the house to the side of the house. I'm like, I don't want to see it. I don't care that drunken Polly is doing that. So I just
Okay,
think,
well-
where is Yvonne Drago in this?
Oh, okay. So the greatest thing about Rocky 1, and this isn't to say that I don't love Rocky 2, Rocky 3, and Rocky 4. Most Rocky diehards will agree with me and say Rocky 1 is the best. Okay. Rocky 3 is the second best, the one with Mr.
Clubber
T.
Lang. Oh, Mr.
Clubber
Yes,
Lang,
Clubber
yes.
Lang.
Excellent. And then there's some horrible Rockies that involve Sylvester Stallone, and then of course there's Creed,
Yes.
which is excellent. But we're not going to talk about that.
I have heard that.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. With Michael B. Jordan,
Yeah,
and
sure,
that's
sure,
a whole
yeah.
other thing. But this Rocky, and I would say Rocky 2 is very good. Rocky, the sequel is very, very good when he rematches
Yes,
with
which
Apollo.
I have not seen.
Okay. Excellent. But if you hated Rocky 1, then again, the great thing about Rocky 1, and this is why I love it, and maybe some of the reasons why you hate it, is because it is completely divorced from the sequels in the meaning of it. It is not about who's going to win the fight and training and, you know, this one's bravado over that one's bravado and these two guys and others. Rocky 1 is a slice of life. Rocky 1 is about a guy who has nothing going for him, who his goal is to just not be a bum, as he says, okay? And he meets this, in the very beginning, homely kind of loser who works in a pet shop, who is a friend of
can't
his
speak,
brother,
basically.
who's very shy.
Yes.
And he sees something in her, and the two of them connect and eventually build enough confidence for Rocky 2, who is randomly chosen to fight Apollo Creed, who's the heavyweight champion of the world, right? In this,
Yes.
in this
New Year's
Horatio
Day
Alger kind of
yes,
way, like
yes.
complete. Let's pick a complete
Yeah.
Philly local guy, random, to fight Apollo Creed, and this is America, right? And that's what Apollo
Anyone
Creed-
gets a shot.
Anyone gets a shot. And Rocky,
And it is the bicentennial. So the whole sort of
Right.
patriotic
All
American
of it.
dream,
All of
it's
it.
overloaded.
And so Rocky is up for it, but one of my favorite scenes in Rocky, okay, is he's up for it, but he's also so angry at these people who latch onto him,
Yes.
who have
Yeah.
disappointed him in the past. And to me, one of my favorite scenes in Rocky, which I can rewatch over and over again, is when he is smashing his fist at the door, yelling at Mickey,
Oh,
right? Because Mickey's now finally
Yeah.
interested in him after telling him, you know, you're a bum, you're a loser, you don't have what it takes, you could have been a great fighter, but I'm not interested in you, and I'm gonna work with these other guys, and I'm replacing your locker, right? That's what he's basically
yes,
said to
yes.
him. And now Rocky's like, you only want me now, you only want me now, and he's screaming, and Mickey's outside of the house, but he can still hear him, and Rocky is so angry that people never noticed him until this just complete freak moment with Apollo Creed. And I think, again, that's what I love about the movie, is that it isn't about whether Rocky is going to actually beat Apollo Creed, right? It's more a question of whether he can hang with him.
Yes.
Okay.
And makes this explicit.
And yeah, and he's just like, I just want to go a couple rounds with him. I just want to prove
Not get
that I
knocked
can,
out.
right? Prove that I can, again, that I'm worth fighting. That I was a worthy contender, right? And so and he is. And also that you start to see the crowd turn because, of course, in the beginning they're rooting for Apollo,
of course.
and then at the end they're rooting for Rocky, and he's this this nobody, but who manages to take Apollo to the longest, closest match ever. Okay,
and it's not that I'm disappointed that he didn't win, right? Because I already knew that coming in. But here's the thing: is that a tiny, and this is why I just wish that someone else had written the film who wasn't Sylvester Stallone. Because to me, one of the tiny details I wanted more explanation about is when Mickey said, "Well, you could have been a great fighter, but then you started working for the gangster."
Right. He's clever.
Okay, and so part of it, I was like, oh. So what the film is telling us is that Rocky himself made this choice. Right. So Mickey is suggesting that he could have gone the distance in a different way.
Right.
And so I wanted a tiny bit more about that. And here's why. One of the other reasons why I think I would have liked Rocky better if I could have seen it in 1976 is that in 1976, I had not yet seen On the Waterfront.
Okay.
And so
Could have been a contender.
and here's so On the Waterfront, right, set in New York City, right, we are still in that very kind of gritty, working class, gangster adjacent world. And of course in On the Waterfront, our boxer Terry, played by Marlon Brando, has ruined his own career as a boxer because he threw a fight. Right? And which I understand Stallone, that was part of the original script, right? That Rocky was going to throw the fight. So all of these things, right? The language about like, you could have been a contender, right? I don't want to be a bum. I want to go the distance. All of that stuff just takes me back to this famous monologue, right, of Marlon Brando in the backseat of the car, talking to his brother. Why did you make me do it? I could have had this great career. I could have been a contender instead of what I am now, which is a bum. And so to watch that, right, and have that super strong, Elia Kazan, Marlon Brando, 1955, Oscar winning, especially because, and I'm about to stop, of course, Marlon Brando, the character is Terry, his love interest in On the Waterfront is the beautiful and shy Ava Marie Saint, right, who again is herself, this kind of very demure, modest young woman who is the sister of a neighborhood guy that they've, killed or beaten the crap out of or whatever. And so to me, I kind of look at Rocky, again, erasing the whole Philadelphia sense. And I'm like, so it's like Stallone watched On the Waterfront.
No,
and he's like, wait, I'm about to stop. It's as if he said watched On the Waterfront and said, I know this is an Oscar-winning film and stuff, but it doesn't have a montage. It doesn't have a training montage.
Okay, well,
I want a training montage with music set to it.
But here's the thing also, again, the Philly of it,
Yes,
which is
sure.
so important in the movie and in the 1970s and showing urban life in the 1970s.
Yeah.
We don't see, I don't think there's any city hall, there's no kind of skyscraper, we don't see any of the sort of fancy town Philadelphia. We're not seeing Society Hill, we're not seeing these different areas of Philadelphia. We're seeing Kensington, okay? We're seeing hard scrabble, urban life, graffiti, crime, mob, punching the meat, all that, okay? And so Rocky is about the people who live in Philly who don't go to Duke and work there. And to me, that's what's so great about it. And the training montage, which again, there's all kinds of, Reddits or whatever came before Reddit, questions about the inaccuracy of the training montage, because he could have never run through those various parts of Philadelphia that are completely disconnected, and there's absolutely no way he could have gotten from one part of the city to the other, running through all these places, which is fine. The Italian Market, the Schuylkill, they're nowhere near each other. Okay, but nobody really cares. And this also, in later iterations of Rocky, I believe it's Rocky 2, where a bunch of kids run after him when he's doing his training. And then by the time that he trains with Apollo Creed to fight Mr. T, he's on the beach. And that's when they have their kind of homoerotic, water-hugging tank top moment. Right? But this one is really when he starts to run. And, of course, that very famous art museum stairs moment when he gets to the top and he's winded it the first time. And then by the end, he's flying high now, feeling strong now, all of it. And
He's like the winged victory at the Louvre, which
Yeah.
is also on top of steps. But anyway.
look, I mean, it is the most iconic Philly image ever. It is the thing that anyone from Philly will tell you comes to mind as Rocky. If you say, name a Philly movie, people are going to say Rocky. You go into the airport, there's t-shirts with Rocky on them, okay? So there's a reason why nobody's thinking about On the Waterfront, okay?
I'm thinking about On the Waterfront.
I know you
That's
are.
the bad part.
I know you are.
I'm thinking about
Nobody who eats a hoagie is thinking about On the Waterfront.
Which is
okay?
actually too bad because they might love On the Water. If you like Rocky, you will like On the Waterfront.
Yeah, and again, it's been a while for me with On the Waterfront. And it's strange that I didn't make the connection between the two, but it is also because to me, Rocky is so rooted in Philly lore that it is difficult for me to separate it from anything else. And also because Rocky has been repurposed so many times and connected to so much Philly sports and, the Eagles parades and all sorts of things. You always hear the Rocky music that's playing at the Phillies game or whatever. It's a thing that has taken on a life of its own, and of course the Rocky statue is just only part of that. But it is the thing that a lot of tourists want to see in Philly.
I'm sure it
interestingly.
is. Probably rather than Ben
rather than the actual art in the art museum, okay? Or Ben Franklin, or William Penn, or all the other Philly things that are equally as important.
Well, I do admit, not that I'm going to watch them, but I do admit it would be interesting because I don't remember it from Rocky 3 and Rocky 4, which I did see. But to see that sort of, okay, Rocky now wealthy, right? If the whole thing is like the whole hardscrabble, impoverished, right? He's living in the worst studio apartment on the planet.
You need to see him in LA wealthy.
And that's the thing.
It's great.
Okay, so by the time he's in Creed, since I haven't seen any of them, and I would like to, but in Creed, he's training, right? Like young Apollo's son, right?
Yes.
So is he still, he's still a celebrity, I assume? Because doesn't he lose all his money?
Yeah, he loses all his money. He's like a down on his luck guy again. He's he's back. He's wearing the black hat again. He's kind of a nobody. He's kind of a nobody, and he plays the Mickey role.
And that is an American story too.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you are up, and sometimes you are down.
Exactly.
So, okay. Before we end,
so do we have any books that we would like to connect to any of these themes?
I hate to say it, I did not prepare a book recommendation for today. I probably would, because when I think about Philadelphia, I think about the Lay Library at the University of Pennsylvania. I know, it's a weird thing to think about. I know. When I'm not thinking about Rocky. And I'm not going to do any kind of book recommendation attached to that. If I think of something, I will put it on the page. Do you have, as a native
so my recommendations are the following.
Oh, what about the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin?
No, I'm not going to give the autobiography of Benjamin
that can be
Franklin.
Mine. That can be mine.
I will just say that if you are in Philadelphia, if you're in Philadelphia, you already know you can go to Lee's, you can go to in Jersey, you can go to Dino's, you can go to the White House. These are hoagie places, okay? And there are a lot of other fantastic hoagie places, but choose wisely. And don't go where there's Cheese Whiz. And here's the thing. Pat's versus Geno's. Neither. Go where locals eat, not tourists. And that is where tourists go. Okay? And again, I can go on and on with the Philly food and questions about the Philly food. But the way you know if you're not a shoebie, okay? The way you know you're not a shoebie is if you eat a cheesesteak or a pizza steak and you don't put any kind of condiments on it that you would put on some other kind of crap sandwich.
But what about mayo? Have you? I'm teasing you. I'm teasing.
Look, I mean, again, I'm just. The whole conversation is now starting to make me hungry and also starting to make me very angry at Jersey Mike's. So, which I've never ordered from and never will.
Can I actually say one more thing about Rocky?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say how impressed I was that when Rocky was doing all of those runs, like
Yeah,
all
yeah,
over
yeah.
Philadelphia,
Yeah.
that he was wearing black Converse high tops.
Yes.
Probably not the most efficient running shoe.
By the way, one of the most often quoted lines that I've heard is about sex and weak legs. Right. Women, weak legs.
Women.
Mickey.
I did like how Talia Shire got kind of a glow up as the movie went
Oh,
on.
she absolutely.
I mean,
loved-
Talia
and
Shire is a beautiful woman.
I
but-
love at the end how he's like, "Where's your hat?" Okay, he's been pummeled. His face is falling off. Right, he's completely annihilated, and he's like, "Where's your beret?" He loves him some Adrian.
He does.
And
That was
that love story again. I mean, these are just two lovable losers. And
Wait, but what happens to Butkus the dog? That's all. Does he show up in Rocky 2?
that's a really good question. And
Where? That was like a big ass.
Well, he also didn't run with him when he did the montage. Because she says, I got you this dog for when
Yes,
you run,
for running.
right? And then he doesn't run with him, right? But he continues to punch the maid.
He does punch the meat. I was like, I'm
And
glad I'm a vegetarian.
As a vegetarian, I didn't know how you'd respond to that scene.
Well, no, I was glad I don't eat meat because I was like, maybe in like, if I were eating meat, my meat would have been like punched by some, boxer in training. Would you want to think that like someone had been like punching your meat sounds really obnoxious.
So anyway,
It sounds a little risque.
So to end this, I just want to say, I love you, Philly. I love you, Jack, at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the great schools in Philadelphia. I love you, parents, if you're listening, right outside of Philadelphia. And all my Philly friends, I don't know if any of them are part of this 10 listening to this podcast, but
We love you, 10.
But we love you, 10, and go to Philly and eat your heart out.
Oh, okay, this is so perfect. And do you know who might want to go to Philly?
Who is that?
Don't forget to do this. Our 2 listeners from New Zealand might want to go to Philly.
Yes, we have located, we do not know who you are, 2 listeners that are in New Zealand. And so if you
In different cities.
So
in
if
different
you
cities.
come to America, the
Go to
second
Philly.
part of Trading Places, by the way, if you like Trading Places, you'll love coming to America, where Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy make a cameo.
Oh, I forgot about that. It's been so long since I saw
another terrific Eddie Murphy movie.
I mean, I cannot express to you how much I love Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, there's really...
It's like so...
if you,
such a genius.
and
I
I'll
mean,
tell you
he's
something. If you didn't like Eddie Murphy, this would be the end of this.
Well, come on. Come on. Again,
Yeah.
I saw the Raw tour. I'm going to say it again.
All right.
Saw
Well,
live.
that
So awesome.
might make up for your distaste
I
of
can't.
Rocky.
I will just say before we go, so we've talked an awful lot about social class, economic class, the working class, and it's not going to shock you that in our next pod episode, when we go to my hometown, which we're
Right.
going to expand more broadly to the state of Maine, we will also be talking about social class and the working class. So I hope our 10, including our New Zealand listeners, stick with us for next time.
Okay. Until then.
Harpies out.
Harpies out.
Director's sly hand. We see the echoes of the past across the land.